Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're looking at this. It's the Harley Benton TE-69TL Hot Rod NT Roasted Electric Guitar. And that is a bit of a mouthful, but all of the parts of that name do have an explanation, which we'll get to later in this video. But put quite simply, this guitar is Harley Benton's take on a Fender Telecaster Thinline type of electric guitar. Now, the Fender Telecaster Thinline originally came out in the late 60s, 1969 to be precise. So there we've got the 69 part of the name here. And the two big visual differences that you'll see between a Thinline Tele and a standard Tele is that the Thinlines have a chambered body, so normally with F-holes like this, and this specific guitar has one up here, so it's chambered. And the second big difference is the fact that a Thinline Telecaster will have a very different looking scratch plate to that of a standard Telecaster. So they have hollowed out bodies as well, and that should help us with reducing the weight of Telecasters, which sometimes can be quite hefty. But apart from that, it's a fairly simple rock and roll machine. So what do you get for your 220 euros? That's what I'm going to answer in this video, so stick around if you'd like to hear my thoughts and opinions on this guitar. I'll play it also in as many different musical styles as I can for you, so you can really hear the extreme versatility of this style of instrument. But first, let me tell you about the features and specifications of this guitar. So this is the Harley Benton TE-69TL, and we'll start by looking at the guitar's body. And as you can see straight from the off, this is an extremely beautiful instrument indeed. It's got an ash body and an ash top, and it is absolutely wonderful to look at. Just look at this grain on the top here. And if I flip it round to the back, you can also see that we've got a beautiful looking guitar, really, really nice, sort of peak 70s IKEA table sort of design, but it looks absolutely lovely, and it looks far more expensive than this guitar actually is. Now, this guitar is a natural finish, that's the NT part of the name, and it's a high gloss finish as well. So we've got a thick poly coating over this guitar here. It's been done very well indeed. It's a big, hefty, weighty beast of an instrument, which you do sometimes expect from guitars like this as well. Now, looking at the rest of the body, we've got fairly standard looking Thinline Telecaster sort of controls and hardware, but there's a twist here, and that's where the hot rod name comes into it. So we'll start off with the bridge. That's a pretty traditional 3-saddle Harley Benton / no name affair. We've got 2 controls here, a volume and a tone, a 3-way selector switch to move between the pickups, and that Thinline style scratch plate there. Now, the hot rod aspect comes with the pickups themselves, because the bridge pickup is actually a stacked humbucking pickup. It's a Roswell pickup, just like the neck pickup, but the bridge pickup is actually a Roswell TE-KB Alnico 5 stacked TE humbucker. So what you actually have is this in humbucking mode in standard operation, and you pull up the tone pot here to split it down to single coils. And Harley Benton say that that's going to give you the best of both worlds. Humbucking tones, no hum, no extraneous noise whatsoever, but pull it out like that and you're going to get beautiful twangy Telecaster tones. And we're going to hear that in the playing part of this video if the guitar really matches up to those lofty expectations. So that's the body of the TE-69TL. And moving up to the neck, if I flip it over, you can quite clearly see where the roasted part of this guitar's name comes from, because we've got a roasted neck here, or as Harley Benton call it, caramelized. So it's a caramelized or roasted maple neck. The fretboard as well looks to have been roasted. We have 21 frets here. Harley Benton don't tell us how big the frets are, but they feel fairly modern. They feel like medium jumbos to me. The fingerboard radius is also nice and modern feeling for you modern players. It's 305 millimeters, which is about 12 inches. We have a 42 millimeter graphite nut here as well. And the scale length on this guitar is a Fender approved 648 millimeters or 25.5 inches. Now, moving up to the headstock there, we can see the Harley Benton Vintage Series headstock. And if I flip it over, we've got 6 in line, no name, Clouson style tuning pegs. So this is the Harley Benton TE-69TL, and what we're going to do now is play it. Now, as is usual for my channel, I'll play the TE-69 in as many different musical styles and settings as we can. We'll be using my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 amplifier for today's tone demo, and I'll start off on the clean channel. We'll play some folky stuff, some blues, some country and some pop, that kind of thing. Then we'll kick into the crunch channel of the amp and we'll play some classic rock and some indie rock as well. After that, we'll go up to the amp's lead channel, we'll do some harder rock and some punk rock, maybe even some slightly heavier stuff. And at the very end, we'll go back to the amp's clean channel. I'll kick in my Rev G3 distortion pedal. We'll tune the TE-69 down to drop D and see if it can do a bit of proper metal chugging. Enough talk then. This is the Harley Benton TE-69TL Hot Rod NT Roasted. Let's play it now and we'll speak in more detail about it afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Harley Benton TE-69TL Hot Rod NT Roasted, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones. Now for me personally, when this guitar came out in late 2022, I was extremely excited because I've always liked the sort of glamorous look of Thinline Telecaster type guitars, and they sort of promise a bit more than a standard Telecaster would. Now Telecasters are of course extremely versatile guitars. You can do pretty much anything with them, but people often say that if you have a Thinline, you can go into more area, sort of fuller sort of tonal territory, and some people like that, and it's something I've always wanted to try. Plus I think Telecaster Thinlines look really cool, and I've always wanted to own one. So when Harley Benton sent me this, I was very excited to get it out of the box and start playing straight away, and so that's pretty much what I did. And now what I'm going to do is tell you in a bit more detail my thoughts and my opinions about this guitar and whether or not I think it's going to be worth your money at the end of the day. So my first impressions of this guitar then when I opened the box were, well, firstly, what a beautiful instrument it is. I don't actually own any other natural coloured guitars apart from acoustics because I tend to prefer blue guitars or different sort of exciting looking finishes, but the natural finish on this guitar really lets that ash body and top shine. Just look at the grain on that. It is a wonderful looking guitar, really beautiful, and it's got a classic sort of a look. It does look a bit like an old school table, but I love that about it. It's a really wonderful looking guitar. The black scratch plate works perfectly with it, and it just feels pretty elegant and pretty classy straight off the bat. Now the other thing that I noticed the first time I picked up this guitar was that it's actually a very weighty beast, and this actually tallies up with quite a lot of the reviews that you can see online on the Thomann product page for this particular guitar. Now this specific example weighs in at 3.85 kilograms, which is about 8 pounds 8, so that's pretty weighty. You know, over 4 kilograms is backbreaker territory, at least in my opinion, and this is the heaviest guitar that I've got here in the room with me right now, so it's something that I would definitely like to see at least half a kilogram lighter if possible. And you'd think that with a chambered body like this one, okay, it's only chambered on this side, like this is solid ash on this side, but you'd think that with a whole part of the body cut out, they'd be able to get it at a slightly lighter weight. But no, apparently that is a thing, and if you read some of the other reviews of this guitar, it appears to be a general thing, and I don't just have an exceptionally heavy example of this specific model. So that's something to know straight off the bat. If you don't like heavy guitars, you might want to consider looking elsewhere. Of course, it's not a problem if you're just playing sat down, but put this guitar on a strap and it does become very weighty pretty quickly. So that's something which I didn't like on first viewing. Once I started playing the guitar though, I really got into it a lot more because it feels fantastic to play, and it feels like the build quality is very decent for the 220 euros that you're going to pay for this instrument. Now the neck itself is fantastic. It's really comfortable. You've got this satin roasted maple neck at the back here, and a really nice and forgiving sort of general C-shaped neck that's going to fit pretty much any guitar player's hand. I think it's really comfortable, molded to my hand straight away. The frets have been done really well as well, no rough edges or anything like that. The setup on the guitar seems to be good too. The nut seems to have been cut well, the tuners do their job, the intonation was decent straight out of the box as well. And in terms of the rest of the build quality, the hardware all did its job. The bridge is decent, like I said. You've got no problems with the intonation despite this being a vintage Telecaster style of a bridge. The push-pull pot works fine. It does what it says on the tin exactly well. The switches all work well. No problems there whatsoever. Now it is a tiny bit rough, some of the finishing around the F-hole here, but that's the kind of thing that you have to put up with as a compromise when you're paying under $500 or whatever for an instrument. At $220, you can't expect perfection. That's what I'm trying to say. The other crucial thing that we need to talk about with this guitar is, of course, those sounds. Now this is a Thinline Telecaster type of guitar, so it's going to sound slightly different to that of a traditional Telecaster anyway, but we also have the unique aspect of the stacked humbucking bridge pickup here, which also affects the middle setting when you've got it in stacked operation as well. So that's going to also take us slightly away from traditional Telecaster territory. Now leave me your thoughts and opinions down there, what you thought about this guitar and how it sounded, but my opinions are as follows. Well, I think it's an incredibly versatile instrument, and I really like the whole gamut of sounds that it gives you. However, I would say that if you're looking for a traditional Tele, steer clear, go elsewhere and pick a more traditional Telecaster, because this guitar is something slightly different. Now, Thinline Telecasters tend to do their own thing compared to standard Teles anyway. They sound more open, they sound fuller, they sound airier, a lot of people say, and I think that's probably to do with the fact that there's a lot more air in the body of the guitar, but this one does that as well, and in combination with the stacked bridge humbucker, I almost thought that it sounded like an ES335 or even a sort of slightly thinner Les Paul in some contexts, which is no bad thing, and it it makes this guitar suitable for so many different styles of music. With the clean sounds, using the bridge stacked humbucking pickup, I thought we got some warm and thick sounds which were perfect for mellow, jazzy sort of stuff. Really nice for strum things as well. Very Les Paul sounding, at least to my ears. When we used the single coil bridge pickup like a Tele, it twanged and it bit, a very bitey sort of a take your head off sort of a tone. Very nice tone, does that Tele sort of a thing almost authentically, but you have to tame it with judicious use of the tone pot, at least in my opinion. It's a very thin sound, it's very brittle, and it will be too much for some people's ears. Does it sound 100% like a standard Telecaster? Not really. I am going to do a separate video where I compare this to a more standard Telecaster, my Harley Benton TE-62cc, so that'll be coming out in a few weeks. Stick around for that if you're interested to hear how similar and indeed how different they sound. When we put some distortion on the signal, this was where this guitar really started to become a bit more alive for me as well. For the classic rock stuff and the indie rock stuff too, I love the thick pushed sounds of this stacked bridge humbucker. I preferred that over the single coil sound for most of the video, and for the neck and middle in between pickup settings I thought it sounded really decent too. Now of course, because we've got a stacked bridge humbucker here, that also affects the middle tone setting, because you can have both pickups on together, this one either stacked humbucking or a single coil, and the difference between those two sounds is quite subtle, but I personally tended to prefer it when having the stacked bridge humbucker in use as opposed to the split coil option. Once we got up to higher gain territory, again, this guitar was fantastic for hard rock, it's perfect for punk rock as well, really, really good for that, and it handled the progressive rock stuff as well. It handled everything that I threw at it with a lot more gain. When we went down to drop D as well with the Rev G3, it worked really, really well, and this is in fact a guitar that you could play metal on no problem. You probably wouldn't choose to use this guitar if you were exclusively playing metal, but it will do it. One very interesting thing that I found when using higher gain was actually that the single coil version of the bridge pickup has less unwanted noise than the humbucker, so for some reason it was quieter to have it in split single coil mode than in humbucking mode. I've no idea why that was the case. Maybe someone with more knowledge than me can answer me that down in the comments, but that's something that you might want to be aware of. Otherwise, with high gain, I thought that using the single coil mode on the bridge pickup was great to give a bit more bite and clarity and a bit more kind of overall openness to some of the notes. If you really want to get tight with the chugging, you might want to flick it into single coil mode for that kind of stuff. Overall though, when it came to the sounds, I found that 90% of the time I wanted to be on the bridge humbucking mode as opposed to the split coil mode. I found the neck pickup on this guitar to be decent enough, but it didn't have too much character, and I didn't really find myself coming back to it in too many circumstances apart from for indie rock sort of stuff. And that actually goes back to my favorite guitar, my Fender Telecaster, which is behind me on the rack there. I actually built a neck humbucking pickup into that guitar because I thought the single coil pickup was a bit sort of characterless and didn't really do much for me. And that would be the same story for me with this guitar, I think, as well. For me, it's all about that bridge pickup, and mostly in stacked humbucking mode as well. Now, if you've been watching this video and you're really enjoying this sort of thin line thing, but you'd like to test out maybe some other options, what else is out there? Well, actually, good news. There's plenty of thin line type guitars out there. A Fender Telecaster thin line is probably going to be too much money if you're considering something at around this sort of a price point. However, the good news is that Squier also have our backs, and in their Classic Vibe series, they have a bunch of different Thinline Tele models. Some have humbucking pickups, some have single coils. There's a bunch of different colors and styles to choose from, so go and check some of those out if you're interested in the real thing, with the real shaped headstock, of course. Those will start at about 380, 390 euros, so comfortably more expensive than the TE-69TL, but hey, that's when you're paying for the real thing, and that's of course important to some people. So apart from that, you could also try something like the Tele Deluxe in the Squier Affinity range. That's a similar sort of price to this specific guitar. It comes with two Squier humbucking pickups, so it's a solid body guitar as well. It's a little bit different, but there are some cool color finishes available, including at the moment a very, very nice looking silver burst, which I might have to treat myself to at some point. Now, when it comes to other guitars like this, other thin line type instruments, there's not actually that many around. But if you're looking for a Telecaster shaped thing with two humbuckers, then there are many, many options. And I'd probably start with Harley Benton and say check out their Fusion series. Those are a bit more sort of rock and roll, a bit more high gain sort of themed, but those are excellent guitars starting at about 250, 260 euros, that sort of thing. And if you wanted to go more traditional Telecaster type guitar, look no further, I would say, than the Harley Benton TE-62cc. That's about 150 euros, so comfortably cheaper than this guitar as well. It has two single coil twangy Tele pickups, and I've done a video of my TE-62 right there, which you should watch after this if you're interested in that type of instrument. Now, in terms of other brands, if you've got a bit more money, there are excellent guitars in the G&L Tribute series. They have some ASAT Blues Boys semi-hollow guitars with a humbucking pickup in the neck and a single coil in the bridge and an F-hole chamber body. Those are excellent instruments. They're probably about 2 or 3 times the price of this TE-69 guitar, but very much worth checking out. I've recently got into G&L and I absolutely love the Tahini guitar that I tried recently from them. Video of that if you'd like to check that too. That's an offset, by the way, but also worth mentioning here. And if you're looking for something a little bit outside of the box, maybe something with humbuckers but with an F-hole with a semi-hollow body, then consider something a bit different. Maybe even something like an Epiphone ES339. That's a smaller bodied 335. Those are excellent choices. Or you could even go down the route of something like my tried and trusted Ibanez Artcore AS73FM. Video of that one there if you want to see that one as well. That's more like a 339. It's got a big body, but it's got 2 humbucking pickups, and those guitars are extremely versatile too. It's all about the kind of vibe that you specifically want. So check out your local dealer, check out online what you can find, and you're sure to find something that works for you. So my final conclusions on the TE-69TL are that it is a fantastic instrument for the price. I think it's really, really good. 220 euros in terms of the build quality and the playability. Absolutely fantastic. I can't fault it for that. There's a couple of things where I would give you pause for hesitation. Number one would be the weight of this specific guitar. Like I already said, this one is a little bit too heavy for my personal liking. If it was half a kilogram or a pound or 2 lighter, I would much rather want to own it than I currently do. And the other thing is that if you're looking for a Telecaster, this is not a Telecaster. It's a slightly different thing. It's a thin line sort of a Telecaster, and that humbucking bridge pickup also gives it a different vibe completely. Now, for some of you, it might be an advantage to have that. It gives you thicker, fatter, Les Paul-y sort of sound, and it really, really does sound good. But if you're looking for traditional, twangy, Thinline Telecaster sort of tones, you're probably not going to be too satisfied with this guitar, so look elsewhere for that. But in terms of what it's aiming for, I would say the TE-69TL is a really, really decent instrument. If it was about 3 kilograms or so, it would be even higher in my estimations, and I would have no hesitation whatsoever in going out and paying my own hard-earned cash for one of these guitars, because everything else about it is really, really decent, and I really enjoyed it. Now, I would also like it if Harley Benton would come out with some different color schemes. Okay, this natural one is beautiful, but I would like to see it in maybe a more exciting color scheme, maybe a blue one. I like blue guitars, maybe a silver burst, maybe something else, whatever, but just a few more options to satisfy those of us who prefer slightly more over-the-top finishes on our guitars. Now, I hope that this video has answered all of the questions that you may have had about the TE-69TL, but if there's anything else you'd like to know, drop me a comment down there and I shall answer to the very best of my ability. And hey, if you're still around, it would make my day if you wanted to like this video, or maybe even sub to my channel, because that really does help the little community that we're starting to build here. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.